This game's called Return to Sender. Apparently, you can send some pretty crazy things through the mail. We've heard a lot about the mail service the last few weeks, but we're going to decide which of the, if the post office will or will not allow us to mail the following items. So here's our rules. Again, as usual, it's a true or false question. It's the honor system. Keep track of your own points, and we'll see who gets all the love at the end, all the excitement, and wonderful. Here's the sample. Can you mail a piece of toast? What do you think? Yes or no? Ready? And the answer is, whoops, yes. You can mail a piece of toast. I know exactly how it would stay fresh, but who needs that? Apparently it's something that's done. Can you mail a carbonated beverage? That's like a can of soda pop. Do you think? Ready? Yes, no, the answer is, wait, what was the answer? Oh, are all the answers at the end? Wait, let's go back. Whoa, oh, we're going forward. Okay, well, I don't know. Can you mail a parrot? Yes or no? Where's the answer? Okay, well, I guess the answers are all going to be at the end. I hope the answers are at the end. Otherwise, this is a really bad game. Day-old chickens. All right, I've got my guesses for these. A live turtle. Fireworks. Can you mail fireworks? Yes or no? I think that's question 5. I can't even read the numbers on this game. 6. A scorpion. Can you mail a scorpion? For people just joining us, the question is, are these things legal to mail? Antique firearms.
Muted.
Can you mail firearms? Can you mail alcohol? Live snakes. Well, these are very, very interesting. I really hope we get the answers. And baby alligators. Alive, yeah, living baby alligators. The answers. Ready? Everybody got your answers ready? Beverages. Yes, you can mail a carbonated beverage. Parrots? No. No live parrots. Chickens? Look at your answer. What did you say? Yes. A day-old chicken can be mailed. How would you attach the mailing label? I guess it could be in a box. Okay. Why didn't they just start the puzzle right here? I don't know where the answers are attached. A live turtle? No, I thought actually I was thinking a turtle would work because turtles don't need very much. Fireworks, I'm going to guess no for fireworks. What did you guys guess? No was the correct answer. No fireworks. Scorpions. Abby, you're saying no? I think maybe you could. I think maybe you could. Yes, I'm right. If you can mail a chicken, why not a scorpion? How about a firearm? Antique. The word antique is interesting. I'm going to say no. No, okay, you can. All right. And alcohol? No. Carbonated beverage? Yes. Alcohol? No. Live snakes. Well, I think we all know what we want the answer to be, and that is the answer. Alligators. Would that be better or worse than a snake? It's a yes. It's a yes. Wow, I lost track of my answers. So anybody get more than 5 right? Okay, I see at least 1 6. All right, anybody else? Oh, there's a 5 and a 6. Okay, so we're gonna need the tiebreaker. Here we go, ready? The tiebreaker is live bees. Can you mail live bees? Let's say The answer is yes. Okay. That's a surprising answer, people. All right. Return to sender. How did we do? Anybody get more than 6 correct? Oh, somebody got 8. Mary. Nice. 10. Louisa. Fantastic. How did you know all those? You're just a good guesser? Okay, I like it. All right, lots of 7s, 8s, and 6s. That's good. That's good. I didn't keep track, but it was bad after a while. Great. For those of you just joining us, we're so glad to have you. 9th graders, you are in the correct room. The 10th graders are doing something different that we just always do with just 10th graders each year. We meet with the 10th graders from the synagogue. So Drew, way to go. So they're with them, and 9th graders, you'll get to do that next year. But we're so glad to invite you all here to this one. We haven't done this session before with any of the kids. So 9th graders, it won't feel like a repeat for you. But before we get into the lesson, let's go through some announcements. All right, now this is weird to say, but it is our last small group night. It's the last night we'll be doing confirmation in this style for the rest of this calendar year until after Christmas. And that is because, okay, first of all, it's starting this way. Rename yourself if you have not yet done that with your first name and your last name or last initial and your pronoun and your grade. And the grade helps us so that we can more or less get you into small groups with others of your grade. If any of you have missed a night, you can always go to our YouTube channel, which is just right there on your screen, gloriadaystpaul.org/confirmation, and find any of the sessions that you missed. You wouldn't be able to do the small group work, but you can do the large group work. And you know that the small group work is actually in your little book. So you can always open that up and find out what was happening that night. Note that the 18th next week we are having confirmation, but it's a serve night. So you should have gotten a packet in the mail. If you haven't, please contact Katie. And it explains about ways that we'll do serve night this year. You're going to do it with just those people living in your household. Or if there's another family or group of people that's in your pod, you can include them. So we won't have a large group meeting. You won't come to either of the links that you would normally come to tonight for either of the 7th, 8th, or 9th and 10th group. You won't have a small group meeting. You're simply going to do something with your family. And those are all described in the snail mail that you received. We want you to select a project and then sign up on the link so that we can assist you if there's anything that we need. It's going to look like this. See the next slide. It looks just like that. What's your plan? Are you doing one of these things, or do you have another one? And if you have another, you check that at the bottom of the box and choose that. You'll see all that. When are you doing it? Who will help you? What do you need from the church? And the email to follow up. So thanks for that. We're excited to hear what kinds of things you do. The Wednesday after that is the night before Thanksgiving, and we won't meet that night at all. We just encourage you to say thanks with those people that you're with. We will have a different kind of a worship service online starting. It might be that night, but it'll definitely be up the next morning that you can use with your extended family or your family, however you're gathering for Thanksgiving this year. In December, our Wednesday nights are part of Advent. We will worship as a congregation at 6:30 p.m. each Wednesday night of Advent, and we hope that you'll join us for that. There's really no confirmation meeting or class afterwards, but we are going to have an after party on Zoom with Katie. So look for information about that and see how you can join those meetings after worship in December. Okay. If you have any questions about that, you can get back to Pastor Javen or me, but right now I want you just to kind of tune all that out. Take a look at that candle, and we're going to take 1 minute just to breathe. Give you a chance just to let go and let God, or remember the words, I am not alone. Jesus is here with me. Let's just pause. I am not alone. Jesus is here with me. You are not alone, my friends. I'm so glad that you're with us tonight and that you can be reminded that God is with you no matter what, always. All right. Let's begin our lesson, our large group conversation. We're going to talk about women in scripture, and this is not a lesson that we've included in the past, but people have had questions about it. Why are so many of the stories about men? And what do we think about that? If you made a list of the 50 most mentioned people in the Bible and listed them, precisely 2 of those 50 would have been women. The way this graph in front of you looks, the names Jesus, David, Moses, Jacob, so all those are big. You can see that they're highlighted there. That's because they're mentioned the most frequently. And if you keep going down the list, you'll see of those top 50, Rachel and Sarah are on the list, but they are near the bottom of that 50. So even among all these names, many of whom are maybe men in the Bible you've never even heard of, like Zadok or Jehoash or Abner or Jehu, Jehoiakim, you might say, I don't ever remember hearing those. Okay, those people are mentioned more often than the 2 most frequently mentioned women. Now, it's not true that there aren't women in the Bible. There are. And in fact, these are some that we will have heard the most about, Rachel and Sarah, but Mary, Esther, Rebecca, Ruth, Leah, Mary Magdalene, Eve, Vashti, lots of others, and many other unnamed women. But the truth is, all of these people, after Sarah and Rachel, aren't even in the top 50. So they're mentioned in scripture, but not very frequently. Why is that? Why is it that we hear so seldom the names of women or about women in scripture? Well, you need to remember what patriarchy is. Patriarchy is any kind of a social system in which men are generally in charge of most everything, of decisions, of government, of faith practices, of family, and of businesses. In many patriarchal systems at the time of the Bible, cultures that were patriarchal, women were considered property. They were owned, literally owned by their father or their husband. And there really wasn't any way for them to gain power or control or decision-making outside of the family. That was true of the cultures in which these stories took place, when the women actually were alive. There were many, many patriarchal cultures. Not 100%, not every single family or every single government or culture that's mentioned in the Bible was. And some are to a more degree, higher degree than others. But there were patriarchal structures and cultures of the time. It wasn't only true of when the women lived, but also who remembered the story later. Often the people that remembered the stories were also living in patriarchal societies and cultures, and they would be more frequently led by men and would more frequently remember the stories about the men. The stories were also shared in patriarchal structures, so that the people that shared the story wrote the stories down, communicated those stories, were more regularly men or living in a culture in which men's stories were more prominent. And then when the stories started getting written down, it was also a patriarchal system. And which stories got included, whose perspectives, whose values were included when the Bible stories were being written down, were often men or women living in a very patriarchal system. And so that shaped the response of many of the stories that are included in the Bible. In fact, we know that in scripture itself, there is a hint to us that some of these stories were not remembered. I love this verse from the Gospel of Luke. It's at the time that Jesus was raised from the dead. And you remember that women came to the tomb. Here's a picture of some of them. And this verse says it was Mary Magdalene, Joanna, Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told this to the apostles. That's the other friends of Jesus. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. So the women's stories, the women's witness, the women's account was discounted right from the beginning. And in fact, the Bible tells us that it was discounted. We see that right in that scripture right there. So the whole story was written in a patriarchal time, and the perspective was a patriarchal perspective. And yet, in the midst, even in spite of all that, some stories come through. So it says in one of the very first verses of the Bible, God created humankind in his image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female, he created them. So right from the beginning, God understood creation, humans, to be in the image of God. And that was true for both the men and the women. And yet, in spite of the bias in the scriptures, there are stories. This story is really beautiful. The story that Hagar, who was abandoned and an outsider, she was a slave from a different tribe, and she was looked down upon. She was discarded and sent away, and she called out to God. But it says in scripture, Hagar named the Lord who spoke to her. You are El Roi, for she said, have I really seen God? El Roi means God sees me. And she is the only person in all of scripture who names God, who comes up with a name for God on her own. And that story is often overlooked, but I think it's really beautiful. She names God. She has power to do that. Jesus saw women too. Hagar said, El Roi, God sees me. But other women were seen by Jesus. Jesus, the woman that came to anoint Jesus, Jesus says, I tell you, wherever the good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of me. That story is important, Jesus says, for understanding who he is. We won't be able to understand or tell his story if we don't mention her, if we don't tell he was anointed by a woman right before he died. There are other women that Jesus saw and that Jesus includes. Mary Magdalene was at the tomb as Jesus was raised, and you remember Jesus came to her and called her name, told her, do not hold on to me, but go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord. So we call Mary the first witness of the resurrection. She was the first one that saw Jesus alive, and she was the first one to go and tell others that good news. After Jesus, there were other women leaders in the church. There's this beautiful story in Acts of Priscilla and Aquila who are talking to Apollos. They say Apollos is a great teacher. He's very persuasive. But when they heard him speak, they realized he didn't have all the details right. So they took him aside and explained the way of God to him more accurately. I love that verse. Like they're good teachers. This picture that you see on your screen is from the 3rd century. It's women leaders. This was in a tomb in a catacomb, and they think that this person here is Priscilla in the middle there. Some of the other women that Paul writes about are Junia and Lydia and trying to think of some of the other names, but there were several, Phoebe, there were other leaders in the church who, when Paul writes, he's writing to them because they are the leaders. They must be the teachers, the preachers. They often also were the benefactors. They were the ones supporting it financially. So in spite of living in a system that we might say, well, it was very patriarchal, they must have had access to some means, some money, and they were able to support and encourage the church and they were also the teachers and the leaders as well. We have this beautiful verse in scripture, in the last days it will be, God declares, that I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy, and your young men shall see visions, and your old men shall dream dreams. Even upon slaves, both men and women, in those days I will pour out my spirit. So in spite of all those things that were working against them, we do have these stories of those women I've mentioned, but also all these women and many other women some of whose names are not included, but we hear the story of the daughter or the wife or the woman at the well, different people who were included in the story and had something that is important for us to know the stories. If we didn't have, if they weren't important, they wouldn't have been included for us in some ways. So, and yet, we know that those women at the beginning of the tomb who first told the story, it was considered an idle tale, and no one really was sure what to make of them, but someone must have believed, right? We would not be here today if no one had believed their story. If it had only been seen as an idle tale, we would not be having this Zoom conversation today. Someone must have heard their story and their word and believed them. And that made a difference. We're here today because someone trusted that witness. So what could the women of scripture be telling us today? If many of those who heard the word believed, is there still something that the women of the Bible have to tell us? That's what you're going to look at in your small groups, and we're going to get to go to our small groups and talk about them. Pastor Javen, I don't think we need to have you come back here. I don't need them to come back. Do you need them to come back for anything?
Nope. So small group leaders, when you finished your lesson together, you can just y'all can just leave the meeting entirely. You don't have to come back to the main room.